The envelope felt heavy in her hands, heavier than the diamond necklace the guests assumed was inside. Harper stood center stage in the Sterling family ballroom, hundreds of eyes fixed on her, waiting for her reaction to Beatrice's generous anniversary gift. She tore the seal. It wasn't a deed to a house. It wasn't a check. It was a divorce settlement, already signed by her husband, Ethan. The crowd gasped. Beatrice smirked, raising her champagne glass. "Happy anniversary, dear. It's time to take out the trash." Harper didn't cry. She didn't scream. She simply smiled. A cold, terrifying smile that would haunt the Sterling Empire for generations, because Beatrice didn't know that Harper wasn't just a penniless orphan. She was the one holding the kill switch to their entire fortune, and she was about to press it. The chandelier in the Sterling Manor was so large it looked like a frozen explosion of crystal. Beneath it, the crème de la crème of Seattle's high society mingled, their laughter sounding like breaking glass. It was Harper and Ethan's third wedding anniversary, a date that Beatrice Sterling, the matriarch of the family, had insisted on celebrating with a gala that rivaled a royal coronation. Harper Vance, technically Harper Sterling, though Beatrice rarely used that name, stood near the periphery of the ballroom, smoothing the fabric of her navy blue gown. It was a modest dress, bought off the rack, which stood in stark contrast to the haute couture worn by the other women in the room. Harper knew her role. She was the charity case, the librarian's daughter whom Ethan Sterling, heir to the Sterling shipping fortune, had inexplicably fallen in love with. "You look like you're waiting for a bus, dear." A voice dripped with venom from behind her. Harper turned to see Beatrice Sterling approaching. Beatrice was a woman made of steel and Botox, wrapped in a shimmering gold dress that cost more than Harper's childhood home. "Mother Sterling," Harper said, keeping her voice neutral, "the party is beautiful." "It is, isn't it?" Beatrice swirled her martini. "I spared no expense. After all, tonight is a pivotal night for this family." She looked Harper up and down with open disdain. "Where is my son?" "Ethan is discussing the merger with Mr. Henderson in the library," Harper replied. Beatrice tisked. "Always working. He has to, doesn't he? Someone has to carry the weight of this legacy. It certainly isn't you." Harper bit the inside of her cheek. For 3 years she had endured this. The subtle digs, the overt insults, the way the staff was instructed to check her purse before she left the house. Ethan had always been her shield, or so she thought. He was the golden boy, charming and weak, who loved Harper in private, but withered under his mother's glare in public. "It's time for the speeches," Beatrice announced, snapping her fingers at a passing waiter. "Go find my son. Tell him his mother demands his presence." 10 minutes later, the room fell silent as Beatrice took the microphone on the raised dais. Ethan stood beside her, looking pale. He wouldn't meet Harper's eyes. Harper was beckoned up to the stage by Beatrice's manicured hand. "Come, Harper. Come stand by your husband." Harper climbed the stairs, her heart hammering a warning rhythm against her ribs. She took her place beside Ethan. He smelled of scotch and fear. "Ethan," she whispered. He flinched, but "I'm sorry, Harper." "Friends, partners, shareholders," Beatrice boomed, her voice projecting to the back of the room. "We gather to celebrate 3 years of my son's experiment." A ripple of nervous laughter went through the crowd. "Marriage is a contract," Beatrice continued, her eyes locking onto Harper. "And like any business contract, when it no longer serves the company's best interests, it must be terminated. Harper, dear, I decided to save you the trouble of shopping for a gift this year, so I got you something that will change your life." Beatrice pulled a thick, cream-colored envelope from a velvet box on the podium. She handed it to Harper with a theatrical flourish. "Go on, open it." Harper's hands trembled. She looked at Ethan, pleading silently for him to intervene, to stop whatever cruelty his mother had planned. But Ethan stared at his shoes, his jaw tight. Harper tore the envelope. Inside lay a stack of legal documents. The header was bold and undeniable: Petition for Dissolution of Marriage. She flipped the page. Ethan's signature was already there, dated that morning. The silence in the room was absolute. Then a few gasps. You signed this?" Harper asked, her voice barely audible. Ethan finally looked up, his eyes wet. "She cut off the trust, Harper. She threatened to freeze the accounts. The merger, the company needs the capital. I didn't have a choice." "There is always a choice," Harper said, her voice hardening. Beatrice stepped in, leaning into the microphone. "You have 1 hour to pack your personal effects. The car is waiting to take you to a motel in the city. I've prepaid for 3 nights. Consider it severance." Beatrice laughed, and to Harper's horror, a few of the sycophants in the crowd chuckled along with her. They saw Harper as an interloper, a weed in their manicured garden that was finally being pulled. Harper looked at the papers, then at the crowd, and finally at Beatrice. The shock began to recede, replaced by a cold, sharp clarity. She felt a shift inside her, a mental lock clicking open that she had kept shut for 3 years to play the role of the dutiful, simple wife. "Severance," Harper repeated, the word tasting like ash. "Don't make a scene, dear," Beatrice hissed away from the mic. "Just leave. You're done." Harper straightened her spine. She didn't crumble. She didn't beg. She looked Beatrice dead in the eye. "You're right, Beatrice," Harper said, her voice steady enough for the microphone to pick up. "This marriage was a contract, but you should have read the fine print before you breached it." She dropped the papers on the floor, turned on her heel, and walked off the stage. The sound of her heels clicking on the marble floor echoed like gunshots. The rain in Seattle was unrelenting, mirroring the chaos in Harper's mind as the black town car dumped her on the curb of a Motel 6 on the outskirts of the city. The driver, a man she had known for 3 years, didn't even get out to help her with her single suitcase. He just sped off, eager to return to the warmth of the sterling payroll. Harper stood in the rain, watching the tail lights fade. She wasn't shivering from the cold. She was vibrating with adrenaline. She walked into the dingy room, tossed her bag on the bed, and sat down. She reached into the lining of her suitcase and pulled out a burner phone she had kept hidden since the day she married Ethan. She dialed a number from memory. It rang once, twice. "Status?" A deep, distorted voice answered. "Active," Harper said. "The sleeper is awake. Initiate Protocol 0. There was a pause on the other end. "Are you sure, Wraith? Once we start this, there is no going back. The Sterlings will be liquidated." "Beatrice Sterling just handed me divorce papers as an anniversary gift in front of 500 people, Harper said, kicking off her wet heels. "Burn it down, Dominic, but slowly. I want them to feel the heat before they see the fire." "Understood. Welcome back, boss." Harper hung up and walked to the cracked mirror in the bathroom. She wiped the rain from her face. The Harper Vance, who was a shy librarian's daughter, was a fabrication, a cover identity created 5 years ago. The real woman staring back at her was Harper Vane, the founding architect of Ether Systems, a shadow equity firm that specialized in hostile takeovers and corporate restructuring. She had stepped away from her empire, placing her second-in-command, Dominic Cole, in charge, because she had genuinely fallen in love with Ethan Sterling during a chance encounter in a coffee shop. She had wanted a simple life. She had wanted to be loved for herself, not her billions. She had hidden her claws, played the role of the submissive daughter-in-law, and dimmed her light to let Ethan shine. And they had treated her like a stray dog. Ethan wasn't just weak, he was a traitor. He knew the terms of their prenup, or rather, the lack of one. He assumed she would walk away with nothing because she came with nothing. He didn't know that the Vance family name was a ghost, and that his wife's personal net worth was triple the value of sterling shipping. But money wasn't the weapon tonight. Information was. Harper opened her laptop, a rugged, military-grade machine she kept hidden in the false bottom of her luggage. She logged into the sterling shipping internal server. During her time at the manor, she had accidentally left USB drives plugged into various ports in Ethan's home office. Beatrice thought she was incompetent with technology. In reality, Harper had been mapping their entire digital infrastructure just in case. She brought up the financials for the upcoming merger with Henderson Logistics. This was the deal Beatrice was so desperate to protect, the reason she forced Ethan to divorce Harper. Beatrice needed the Henderson capital to cover up massive embezzlement she had been conducting for years. "Let's see where the bodies are buried," Harper whispered. She began typing furiously. The code flowed from her fingers like water. She bypassed the firewalls, ghosting through the system. She found it within 20 minutes. A shell company in the Cayman Islands named Blue Horizon. Beatrice had been siphoning 15% of sterling shipping's profits into it for a decade to fund her gambling debts in Monte Carlo and pay off blackmailers regarding a toxic waste dumping scandal in the Pacific. Harper smiled. It was worse than she thought. Beatrice wasn't just mean, she was a criminal. Her phone buzzed. It was a text from Dominic. "The board of Henderson Logistics is meeting tomorrow at 9 a.m. to finalize the merger. Beatrice and Ethan will be there." Harper typed back. "Get me a seat at that table." "As who?" Dominic asked. "As the new majority shareholder of Henderson Logistics." Harper closed the laptop. She needed a new wardrobe. She needed a haircut. The mousy brunette with the sensible dresses was dead. The next morning, the sun broke over the city, but Harper was already moving. She walked into a high-end salon at 7 a.m., flashing a black Amex card that had been dormant for 3 years. "Cut it," she told the stylist. "Short, sharp, blonde. I want to look like I own the place." 3 hours later, she walked out. She wore a tailored white power suit that cost more than Beatrice's car. Her hair was a sleek, icy platinum bob. Her lips were painted a dangerous shade of crimson. She put on oversized sunglasses and hailed a cab. "Where to, lady?" "The Sterling Tower," Harper said. "And don't stop for lights." The 40th floor boardroom of Sterling Tower offered a panoramic view of the Seattle skyline, a view Beatrice Sterling believed belonged only to masters of the universe. Currently, the mood inside was tense. The long mahogany table was occupied by the board of directors of Sterling Shipping on one side, and the executives of Henderson Logistics on the other. Ethan sat next to his mother, looking like a man facing a firing squad. He hadn't slept since the gala. The image of Harper standing on that stage, her eyes devoid of the warmth he had once adored, played on a loop in his mind. Beatrice, however, was in her element. She paced behind Ethan's chair, a lioness guarding her cub, though the cub was 30 years old and currently useless. "Gentlemen," Beatrice said, her voice smooth as silk over gravel. "The synergy here is undeniable. Sterling Shipping has the infrastructure. Henderson has the inland distribution network. Together, we dominate the Pacific Northwest. The temporary unpleasantness with my son's marital status is merely a housekeeping issue. It has zero bearing on our liquidity." Mr. Henderson, a pragmatic man with a comb-over and a suspiciously cheap suit, leaned forward. "Beatrice, with all due respect, the grapevine says Ethan's divorce is going to require a significant payout. We need assurance that Sterling Capital isn't about to be tied up in alimony litigation." "I assure you, Robert," Beatrice smiled thinly, "the girl signed a prenup. She gets nothing but the clothes on her back. Now shall we sign the—" The heavy double doors of the boardroom swung open with enough force to slam against the inner walls. The sound was like a thunderclap, silencing the room instantly. Every head turned. Standing in the doorway was a vision in white. The woman was tall, imposing, with platinum blonde hair cut into a razor-sharp bob that framed a face of striking, icy beauty. She wore a tailored white suit that screamed five-figure price tag, and her eyes were hidden behind dark, oversized sunglasses. Beatrice bristled. "Who are you? This is a closed meeting. Security!" The woman stepped into the room, the click of her heels precise and threatening. She reached up and slowly removed her sunglasses. Ethan gasped, knocking his water glass over. The ice cubes clattered loudly on the expensive wood table. It was Harper. But it wasn't the Harper he knew. The soft edges were gone. The hesitation was gone. Her eyes, usually a warm honey color, looked like frozen amber. "Harper," Ethan whispered, horrified and mesmerized. Beatrice recovered quickly, her face contorting into a sneer. You have some nerve showing your face here. Did you spend your severance on a haircut and a rental suit? Get out before I have you dragged out." Harper didn't even look at Beatrice. She walked straight to the head of the table, opposite Mr. Henderson. There was an empty chair there, reserved for a senior analyst who was running late. Harper pulled it out and sat down, crossing her legs elegantly. "I wouldn't do that, Beatrice," Harper said. Her voice had changed too. The meek librarian tone was replaced by a resonant, authoritative cadence that demanded listening. "It's rude to evict the majority shareholder." The room went deathly silent. Mr. Henderson looked confused. "Majority shareholder? Miss Sterling, what is the meaning of this?" "It's Miss Vane, actually," Harper corrected, placing her crocodile skin clutch on the table. "And it means, Robert, that as of 4 a.m. this morning, my firm, Ether Systems, acquired 51% of the outstanding shares of Henderson Logistics via a hostile overnight buyout." She slid a thin manila folder across the table toward Henderson. He opened it, his eyes widening as he scanned the acquisition documents. His face paled. "My God," Henderson breathed. "It's true. The wire transfers. The stock purchases. How is this possible? Ether Systems? The shadow firm?" Beatrice looked like she'd swallowed a lemon. "You're lying! You're a penniless nobody! Ethan, tell them she's lying!" Ethan just stared at his wife, his mouth slightly agape. "I don't know who this is," he murmured, truthful. Harper ignored them. She addressed the Henderson executives. "Gentlemen, the proposed merger with Sterling Shipping is hereby indefinitely suspended. I am initiating a complete audit of Henderson's books before we proceed with any strategic partnerships." Beatrice slammed her hands on the table, leaning over toward Harper. "You can't do this! This deal is life or death for us!" Harper finally turned her gaze to Beatrice. It was like opening a freezer door. Life or death. That's dramatic, Beatrice. Almost as dramatic as serving divorce papers at an anniversary party. Harper leaned forward slightly, lowering her voice so only those close to the table could hear the menace in it. I'm just reviewing the contract. You know how fond I am of fine print now. Beatrice sputtered. Where did you get this money? Who are you sleeping with? Harper laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. Oh, Mother Sterling, you always assume power comes from a man. I built ether systems 5 years ago. I was worth $3 billion the day I married your son. I didn't want your money. I just wanted a family. She stood up slowly, towering over the seated matriarch. But you took that away. So now I'm going to take everything you have. And I'm starting with this deal. Harper turned to the stunned board members. This meeting is adjourned. Robert, my team will be in touch to set up the transition. She put her sunglasses back on, turned on her heel, and walked out of the silent boardroom, leaving the smell of expensive perfume and total devastation in her wake. Harper stood at the floor-to-ceiling window of the penthouse she had purchased 3 hours ago. It occupied the top 2 floors of the Spire, the newest and tallest residential building in Seattle, directly overlooking the older, smaller Sterling Tower. The apartment was sparse, decorated in minimalist chrome and black leather. It was cold, efficient, and devoid of sentimentality. Exactly how she felt inside. Behind her, 3 massive monitors were set up on a glass desk, scrolling lines of green code and financial data. Dominic Cole, her COO at Ether Systems, sat at the keyboard. Dominic was a bear of a man with a shaved head and intellect that rivaled Harper's own. He was the only person in the world who knew the full extent of her operations. The Henderson acquisition is solidified, Dominic reported, his voice a low rumble. We own the supply chain they were desperate for. Good, Harper said, watching the rain streak the glass. What's the status on Sterling's liquidity? Dominic tapped a few keys. A graph appeared on the center screen, showing a sharp downward trend. They are bleeding cash. Beatrice has been moving money frantically all morning, trying to cover the hole the failed merger left. She's pulling from personal accounts, liquidation trusts, everything. Is she tapping into the Cayman accounts yet? Harper asked. Not yet. She's too scared. She knows if she touches Blue Horizon, it might trigger alarms with the IRS. She'll get desperate enough soon, Harper said. Squeeze them harder. Call in the short-term loans Ether holds against their shipping fleet. Tell the banks we view Sterling shipping as a high-risk liability. That will cripple their operational cash flow within 48 hours, Dominic warned. They won't be able to fuel their ships. Do it. Harper turned away from the window. The adrenaline of the boardroom was fading, replaced by a deep, aching hollow in her chest. She had seen the look in Ethan's eyes. It wasn't just shock. It was betrayal, as if she were the monster. He had looked so pathetic sitting next to his mother. The golden boy, tarnished and dull. She hated that part of her still wanted to comfort him, to tell him it was just a nightmare. But the memory of the gala, the public humiliation, burned away the softness. Her burner phone buzzed on the desk. It had been buzzing non-stop for hours. It was Ethan. Dominic looked at the phone, then at Harper. He's persistent. 34 calls. Harper stared at the flashing name. Let him sweat. It buzzed again. And again. Finally, with a sigh of irritation that masked a deeper turmoil, Harper snatched up the phone and answered. You have 30 seconds to convince me not to block this number forever, she said coldly. Harper. Oh God, Harper, please. Ethan's voice was ragged, choked with tears. I don't understand. What is happening? Mother is screaming, the banks are calling, everything is falling apart. Welcome to the real world, Ethan. It's cold outside the bubble, isn't it? Harper, who are you? That woman in the boardroom. That wasn't my wife. Your wife died on that stage last night, Ethan. You killed her when you signed those papers to save your inheritance. I told you I had no choice. She was going to ruin me. And now I am going to ruin you. Poetic, isn't it? Silence stretched between them. She could hear him breathing shakily on the other end. Please, he whispered. I need to see you. Just 10 minutes. I need to understand. If you ever loved me, give me 10 minutes. Harper closed her eyes. The "if you ever loved me" was a low blow. It was also effective. Tonight, 10 p.m., the Obsidian Bar in Capitol Hill. Come alone. If I see your mother's driver or any security, I'm gone. She hung up before he could agree. She threw the phone onto the couch. Dominic raised an eyebrow. Is that wise, boss? He's radioactive right now. I need to look him in the eye, Harper said, walking toward her bedroom suite to change. I need to make sure he's broken before I finish them off. At 10 p.m. sharp, Harper walked into the Obsidian. It was a dark, moody place, all black velvet booths and dim amber lighting, designed for illicit affairs and quiet transactions. Ethan was already there, sitting in a corner booth. He looked wrecked. His expensive suit was rumpled, his tie loosened, and his eyes were bloodshot. He was nursing a tumbler of dark liquor. When he saw her, he half rose, his expression a mixture of hope and terror. Harper didn't smile. She slid into the booth opposite him, keeping a distance. You look terrible, she said. Harper. He reached for her hand across the table, but she pulled it back sharply. He flinched. I don't know where to start. The money, the company. You own Ether? Why didn't you tell me? Would it have mattered? Harper asked. Would you have stood up to Beatrice if you knew I was richer than she was? Or would you just have let her try to manipulate me for my money, instead of discarding me for having none? Ethan looked down at his drink. I loved you, Harper. That was real. The past 3 years were real. Were they? Because it felt like I was auditioning for a role I was never going to get. The role of a suitable sterling wife. My mother. She's impossible. You don't know what it's like growing up under her thumb. She controls everything. She makes you feel like you're suffocating. I know exactly what it feels like, Ethan. I lived in that house for 3 years. Harper leaned in closer, her eyes boring into his. But here's the difference between us. When she tried to suffocate me, I learned how to breathe underwater. You just drowned. Ethan looked away, shame coloring his features. What do you want, Harper? Is this just revenge? Do you want to see us on the street? I want justice, she corrected. Beatrice has been running that company like a criminal enterprise for years. The bribes, the environmental corner-cutting, the embezzlement. Ethan's head snapped up. Embezzlement? That's no. Mother can be cruel, but she's not a thief. Harper laughed, a harsh sound in the quiet bar. She pulled a folded piece of paper from her clutch and slid it across the table. It was a bank statement for Blue Horizon Holdings in the Caymans. She's been skimming 15% off the top since before we met, Harper said. Hundreds of millions, Ethan. Hidden away while she lectured me about the cost of flower arrangements. Ethan stared at the numbers, his face graying. I didn't know. Didn't you? Harper's voice dropped to a whisper, razor sharp. Look at the second page, the authorization signature on the transfer documents for the last 2 years. Ethan flipped the page. His breath hitched. There, at the bottom, was his signature. Ethan Sterling. "No," he gasped. "I never signed this. I don't even know what Blue Horizon is." "Beatrice is smart," Harper said, her voice devoid of sympathy now. "She put the newest accounts in your name. She had you sign stacks of documents, routine corporate filings, I'm sure she called them. You never read them. You just did what Mummy told you." Ethan looked up, his eyes wide with raw panic. "Harper, this is prison time. Federal fraud." "Yes, it is." "She set me up." Tears spilled down his cheeks now. "My own mother set me up as her fall guy. She knew the walls were closing in. She needed a patsy. Who better than the son who never questions her?" Ethan reached across the table again, grabbing her wrist this time, his grip desperate. "Harper, you have to help me. You have all this power, all this information. You can make this go away. Please, I'll do anything. I'll sign whatever you want. Don't let me go to prison for her." Harper looked down at his hand on her wrist, then up at his tear-stained face. For a second, she remembered the man who had proposed to her in a meadow, promising to protect her. That man was gone. She slowly peeled his fingers off her wrist. "You signed the divorce papers, Ethan. You made your choice. You're on her side of the line now." She stood up, towering over him in the dark booth. "I suggest you get a very good lawyer. Though, with the banks freezing your assets tomorrow morning, I'm not sure how you'll afford one." She threw a $50 bill on the table to cover their drinks. "Goodbye, Ethan." She walked out into the cool night air. She didn't feel triumphant. She just felt empty. But the beast demanded to be fed, and Beatrice Sterling was still standing. It was time to finish it. The following morning, the front page of the Seattle Times did not feature the usual weather report or local politics. Instead, a massive headline dominated the fold. "Sterling Silver tarnished. Fraud allegations. Rock shipping giant." Beatrice Sterling sat in her breakfast nook, her hands shaking so violently that her china teacup rattled against the saucer. She wasn't wearing makeup, a rarity for a woman who usually wouldn't be seen by her own house staff without full foundation. Her face was pale, the lines of age suddenly deep and craggy, no longer hidden by expensive creams or lighting. "This is slander," she hissed, throwing the paper onto the floor. "Get me my lawyer. Get me Henderson. Get me anyone who can stop this." Across the table, Ethan sat with his head in his hands. He hadn't changed out of his suit from the night before. He looked like a ghost haunting his own life. "There is no stopping it, Mother," Ethan said, his voice hollow. "I tried to tell you. Harper isn't playing a game. She's executing a demolition." "She's a nobody!" Beatrice shrieked, standing up and pacing the room. "A gold-digging library girl. I should have had her investigated more thoroughly. I should have—" "You should have treated her with respect," Ethan said quietly. Beatrice spun on him. "Don't you dare lecture me. I did this for us, to keep this roof over your head. And now you let her manipulate you with fake documents." "They weren't fake, Mother," Ethan said, finally looking up. His eyes were dead. "I went to the bank this morning at 8 a.m. My accounts are frozen. All of them." The bank manager. He looked at me like I was a criminal. He showed me the transfer logs. "You used my digital signature key. You moved $12 million last month, alone, into Blue Horizon." Beatrice froze. The color drained further from her face. "It was necessary. The liquidity crisis." "You framed me," Ethan whispered. "Your own son." Before Beatrice could conjure a lie, the sound of sirens cut through the morning air. It wasn't the distant wail of city traffic. It was close, loud, and multiplying. The screech of tires on gravel echoed up the long driveway of the Sterling Manor. Beatrice ran to the window. 3 black SUVs and 2 police cruisers were swarming the front entrance. Men in windbreakers with bold yellow letters on the back, FBI, were stepping out, weapons drawn low, moving with tactical precision. "No," Beatrice gasped, clutching the curtains. "No, no, no, they can't come here. This is private property." The front door exploded open with a heavy thud. The sound of shouting voices filled the cavernous foyer. "Federal agents! Search warrant! Nobody move!" In the penthouse of the spire, Harper watched the scene unfold on a live news feed. A news helicopter was circling the Sterling estate, broadcasting the raid to the entire city. "It's happening fast," Dominic said, standing behind her chair. "The DOJ didn't waste time. The evidence we sent over regarding the toxic dumping violations in the Pacific was enough for a warrant, but the embezzlement proof was the nail in the coffin." Harper watched as a figure was led out of the house in handcuffs. It was Ethan. He looked bewildered, stumbling slightly as an agent guided him toward a waiting car. He didn't fight. He just looked defeated. A moment later, Beatrice emerged. She was not going quietly. She was screaming at the agents, kicking at the air, her silk robe flapping around her. It took 2 agents to restrain her and force her into the back of a separate vehicle. "She's fighting to the bitter end," Harper noted, her face impassive. "Are you satisfied?" Dominic asked gently. Harper looked at the screen, at the house where she had spent 3 years being belittled, ignored, and emotionally abused. She saw the garden where she wasn't allowed to plant flowers because they clashed with the aesthetic. She saw the balcony where she had cried silently on her wedding night because Beatrice had told her she wasn't worthy of the family name. "Not yet," Harper said. "This is just the arrest. They have high-priced lawyers. They'll make bail by noon. Beatrice will spin this. She'll blame a rogue accountant, or she'll blame Ethan entirely. She's a survivor, Dominic. Cockroaches always survive the first stomp." "So what is the next phase?" Harper turned away from the screen. "We take the house. We take the legacy. Call the bank holding the mortgage on Sterling Manor. Ether Systems is buying the debt." 3 days later, the media storm was at a fever pitch. Beatrice Sterling had indeed made bail, posting a bond that likely liquidated the last of her legitimate jewelry. Ethan had been released as well, pending further investigation, but he had gone into hiding. Beatrice, however, went on the offensive. She scheduled a prime-time interview with the Seattle Voice, a popular local talk show. She intended to paint herself as the victim of a corporate vendetta orchestrated by a vengeful ex-daughter-in-law. Harper sat in her penthouse, dressed in a robe, waiting. "She's live in 5, Dominic said, queuing up the feed. On the screen, Beatrice sat across from the host. She had been cleaned up by a crisis management team. She wore a soft pastel suit, her hair was perfect, and she dabbed at her dry eyes with a tissue. "It's heartbreaking, truly," Beatrice told the host, her voice wavering perfectly. "To welcome a girl into your home, to treat her like a daughter, only to find out she was a corporate spy the whole time. Harper Vance, or whatever she calls herself, married my son solely to infiltrate our company. She planted those files. She hacked our accounts. This is domestic terrorism, plain and simple." The host nodded sympathetically. "And the allegations of embezzlement?" "Fabrications," Beatrice declared. Deep-fake documents created by her high-tech firm. My son, my poor, gullible son, was manipulated by this woman. She is a predator. Harper picked up her phone. She dialed the number for the show's producer, a direct line Dominic had acquired earlier that day. "Put me through," Harper said. "You wanted the exclusive? You have the exclusive." On the television, the host paused, pressing her earpiece. Her eyes went wide. She looked at Beatrice, then at the camera. "Mrs. Sterling," the host said, her voice buzzing with excitement. "We actually have Harper Vane on the line right now. She wants to respond." Beatrice's mask slipped. For a second, pure terror flashed across her face before she regained her composure. "I have nothing to say to that woman." "Put her on," the host commanded the control room. Harper's voice filled the studio and millions of living rooms across the city. It was calm, clear, and terrifyingly reasonable. "Good evening, Beatrice," Harper said. "It's a lovely performance. You almost had me convinced." "You are a liar and a thief," Beatrice shouted at the ceiling, not knowing where to look. "We can debate my character later," Harper said. "But right now, I think the viewers might be interested in the audio recording from your study on November the 12th, 2023. The day you met with Senator Greaves regarding the zoning permits for the new port." Beatrice went white. "That is illegal wiretapping." "Actually," Harper corrected, "Ethan recorded it on his phone because he was worried you were going too far. It was uploaded to the family cloud server, which, as his wife, I had access to." "Don't you dare," Beatrice warned. "Roll the tape, Dominic," Harper said to her COO, who simultaneously patched the audio file into the broadcast feed, overriding the station's delay. The voice of Beatrice Sterling filled the airwaves, clear and undeniable. "I don't care about the wetlands, Senator. Just bury the report. I'll wire $50,000 to your re-election campaign in the morning. Just make sure the EPA inspector looks the other way. If we have to dump the sludge at night, we dump it at night. Who cares if a few fish die? I have a merger to secure." The silence in the studio was absolute. The host looked like she had just witnessed a murder. "That's AI," Beatrice stammered, standing up. "That's fake." "The FBI forensics team is verifying the metadata as we speak," Harper said coolly. "Beatrice, look at the stock ticker at the bottom of the screen." Beatrice looked. Sterling Shipping, STR, 45%. Trading halted. "You're done, Beatrice," Harper said. "The shareholders are suing. The EPA is on its way. And the bank just sold the mortgage on your manor. You have 24 hours to vacate the premises." Beatrice stared at the camera, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water, before she simply collapsed back into her chair, the fight finally leaving her body. Harper hung up the phone. She didn't smile. She just poured herself a glass of water. The tower had fallen. Now she had to clear the rubble. The rain had returned to Seattle, a fitting backdrop for the death of an empire. The Sterling Manor, once a beacon of unassailable wealth, now looked like a tomb. The gates, usually guarded by stern men in suits, stood open. A moving truck was parked awkwardly on the pristine lawn, its tires digging ruts into the grass. Harper pulled her car up the driveway. This time she wasn't in a taxi or a town car. She was driving her own vintage Porsche 911, a car she had bought with her first $1 million years ago and kept in storage. She stepped out, opening a black umbrella. She walked up the stone steps. The front door was open. Movers were hauling out boxes, furniture, and paintings. The repo men were efficient. They didn't care about the sentimental value of a Ming vase, only its auction price. Harper walked into the foyer. The grand chandelier was dark. The house smelled of dust and cardboard. She found Beatrice in the main salon. The matriarch was sitting on a plastic folding chair, the only piece of furniture left in the room. She was staring at the empty space above the fireplace, where a portrait of her late husband used to hang. Beatrice looked smaller. The pastel suit from the interview was wrinkled. Her hair was unkempt. She held a glass of scotch in her hand, no coaster, seemingly uncaring that she was dripping condensation onto the hardwood floor. "You came to gloat," Beatrice said without turning around. Her voice was raspy. "I came to inspect my property," Harper replied, closing her umbrella and shaking off the rain. "I closed on the deed this morning. The bank was eager to offload a distressed asset." Beatrice laughed, a harsh, jagged sound. "You bought the house? Of course you did. You want to sleep in my bed? Wear my clothes?" "I'm going to burn the bed," Harper said, walking to the center of the room. "And I'm turning this house into a shelter for displaced families. I think it's time the Sterling legacy actually did some good for the community, don't you?" Beatrice stood up slowly, swaying slightly. She turned to face Harper. Her eyes were red-rimmed and filled with a hatred so pure it was almost impressive. "You think you've won," Beatrice spat. "But you'll never be one of us. You're new money. Trash with a checkbook. You have no breeding." "And look where your breeding got you," Harper countered, gesturing to the empty room. "Alone. Bankrupt. Indicted." "I still have my son," Beatrice sneered. "Ethan will come back. He knows I did everything for him." "Ethan is currently in the U.S. Attorney's office cutting a plea deal," Harper revealed softly. "He's testifying against you, Beatrice. In exchange for immunity on the fraud charges, he's giving them everything. The bribe ledgers, the offshore account codes, the dates of the illegal dumping." Beatrice flinched as if she'd been slapped. "He wouldn't. He's weak, but he's not a traitor." "He's not a traitor. He's a survivor. He finally learned the lesson you taught him. Protect yourself at all costs. You made him this way." Beatrice sank back onto the chair, the glass slipping from her fingers and shattering on the floor. She didn't even look at the shards. The realization finally hit her. She hadn't just lost her money. She had lost her dynasty. She was truly alone. "Why?" Beatrice whispered. "Why go this far? You could have just divorced him and taken the settlement. Why destroy everything?" Harper walked closer, her heels clicking on the wood, the same sound that had echoed when she walked off the stage at the anniversary party. "Because you didn't just want me gone, Beatrice. You wanted to humiliate me. You wanted to make me feel small to make yourself feel big. You treat people like disposable tissues. I needed to show you that some people are made of tougher material." Harper reached into her purse. She pulled out a single cream-colored envelope. It looked exactly like the one Beatrice had given her at the party. She held it out. "What is this?" Beatrice asked, eyeing it warily. "A lawsuit?" "No," Harper said. "It's a gift. Call it a severance package." Beatrice took the envelope with trembling fingers. She opened it. Inside was a single plane ticket and a brochure. "One way to Sarasota, Florida," Harper explained. "There's a modest retirement community there, the Golden Palms. I've paid for a small studio apartment for 1 year. It's fully furnished. It's not the Ritz, but it's better than federal prison. If you leave the country today, the DOJ might misplace your file long enough for you to disappear. Dominic has some connections." Beatrice looked at the ticket, then at Harper. "You're letting me go?" "I'm not doing it for you," Harper said, her voice turning icy. "I'm doing it for Ethan. He doesn't need the guilt of visiting his mother in jail for the rest of his life. And I don't want you in my city. I want you gone. Irrelevant. Forgotten." "Forgotten?" Beatrice murmured. That was a fate worse than prison for a sterling. The car is outside, Harper said. Take your things. If you're not gone in 10 minutes, I call the agents back. Beatrice stood up. She clutched the ticket to her chest. She looked around the empty room one last time, stripped of her glory, stripped of her power. She looked at Harper, opened her mouth to speak, perhaps to curse her or thank her, but found no words. She simply nodded, turned, and walked out the door into the rain, a queen exiled from her own kingdom. Harper watched her go. When the front door clicked shut, the silence in the house changed. It wasn't oppressive anymore. It was just empty. A blank canvas. Harper took a deep breath. Her phone buzzed. She's in the car, Dominic reported. She's heading to the airport. Good, Harper said. And Ethan? Dominic asked. He's asking to see you. Harper looked at the spot where the portrait used to hang. Tell him to meet me at the gala. The gala? Dominic sounded confused. The anniversary party was a week ago. No, Harper smiled, a genuine smile this time. The New Beginnings Gala, next Saturday, here at the house. Invite everyone. The board, the press, the society snobs who laughed at me. I have one last announcement to make. What are you planning, boss? Closure, Dominic. Total closure. 1 week later, the driveway of the estate formerly known as Sterling Manor was jammed with Bentleys, Rolls-Royces, and limousines. But the atmosphere was markedly different from the anniversary gala that had taken place just 10 days prior. The stiff, fearful energy that Beatrice Sterling had cultivated was gone, replaced by a buzz of electric curiosity and nervous anticipation. Harper had renamed the event the New Beginnings Gala. She had invited the exact same guest list as the anniversary party. Every socialite, every CEO, every friend who had laughed when Beatrice handed her the divorce papers. They all came. Of course they came. They were terrified not to. Harper stood at the top of the grand staircase, the very spot where she had been humiliated. But the woman standing there now bore no resemblance to the victim in the navy blue dress. Harper wore a gown of deep emerald green velvet that hugged her frame like a second skin, with a slit that ran dangerously high up her thigh. Around her neck sat a diamond choker that was worth more than the collective GDP of a small country. Her platinum hair caught the light of the chandelier, which she had ordered cleaned and rehung with modern, warmer bulbs. Dominic stood beside her, looking formidable in a tuxedo. They look like sheep waiting for the slaughter, Dominic murmured, scanning the crowd below. No slaughter tonight, Dominic, Harper said, sipping sparkling water. Tonight is about re-education. They need to learn who the new apex predator is. She descended the stairs. The music, a live jazz band playing something soulful and upbeat, a stark contrast to Beatrice's preferred classical quartets, softened as she approached. The crowd parted for her, like the Red Sea. Mrs. van der Waal, a woman who had once told Harper she didn't belong at the country club, stepped forward with a tight, terrified smile. Harper. Darling, Mrs. van der Waal chirped, her voice pitching too high. You look absolutely stunning. I was just telling everyone how I always knew you were destined for great things. Harper stopped. She looked Mrs. van der Waal up and down, her expression amused. Really, Margaret? Because I distinctly remember you asking me if I was part of the catering staff at the Christmas party last year. Mrs. van der Waal turned a shade of beet red. Oh, surely I must have been joking. You know my sense of humor. I do, Harper said coolly. That's why you're donating $50,000 to the foundation tonight. Consider it a humor tax." Harper kept walking, leaving the woman sputtering in her wake. She moved through the room, accepting compliments with a regal nod, dismissing apologies with a wave of her hand. She was untouchable. Then she saw him. Ethan was standing near the French doors leading to the garden. He was wearing a suit, but it fit him loosely, as if he had lost 10 pounds in a week. He wasn't drinking. He was just watching her, his eyes filled with a profound, aching sadness. The crowd seemed to sense the tension and created a small buffer zone around them. Harper walked over to him. "You came," she said. "You invited me," Ethan replied. His voice was quiet. "I didn't think you would. I wanted you to see it," Harper said, gesturing to the room. "The life you were so afraid of losing. The people you sold your marriage to impress. Look at them, Ethan. They're just people. Scared, greedy people. They aren't gods." Ethan looked around the room, then back at her. "I know. I see that now. The blinders are off. How is the plea deal?" "Finalized," Ethan said. "I pled guilty to negligence and assisting in fraud. I'm getting 3 years probation and a massive fine. I'm barred from serving on a corporate board for a decade. Sterling Shipping, what's left of it is being dissolved to pay the creditors." "It's a fresh start," Harper said neutrally. "You're free. You don't have to be the heir anymore. You can just be Ethan." Ethan took a step closer. "And who are you, Harper? I've been asking myself that all week. Are you the woman I married, or are you this titan?" "I was always both," Harper said. "You just never bothered to look past the cover of the book. You liked the quiet girl because she didn't challenge you. You liked the librarian because she made you feel big. But a woman like me? I don't need a man to make me feel big. I need a partner who can climb the mountain with me." "I could learn," Ethan whispered, his eyes searching hers for a flicker of the old warmth. "I'm starting over. I have nothing. No money, no mother, no legacy. I'm just a man now. Maybe that man is good enough for you." The question hung in the air between them. It was the climax of their tragedy. The moment where, in a lesser story, the heroine might soften. She might remember the good times, the laughter, the shared coffees. Harper looked at him. She felt a pang of pity, yes. But love? That had been incinerated the moment he signed the papers. She reached out and adjusted his tie, a gesture that was intimate but final. "Ethan," she said softly, "you broke the glass. You can glue it back together, but it will always be cracked, and I don't drink from cracked glass." She dropped her hand. "I don't hate you. I forgive you. But I've outgrown you." Ethan closed his eyes, accepting the blow. He nodded slowly, tears glistening in his lashes. "I understand. You deserve everything." "I know," Harper said. "Goodbye, Ethan." He turned and walked out the French doors, disappearing into the night, leaving the Sterling world behind him forever. Harper took a moment to compose herself. She felt a weight lift off her chest. The final tie was cut. Dominic appeared at her elbow. "It's time for the speech, boss." Harper nodded. She walked to the stage, the same stage where Beatrice had destroyed her life. She took the microphone. The room went silent instantly. "Thank you all for coming," Harper began, her voice ringing clear and strong. 3 years ago, I stood on this stage and was told I was trash. I was told I was a bad investment. She paused, letting the memory settle over the crowd. Tonight, we are correcting the record. The Sterling name is gone from this house. From this day forward, this estate will be the headquarters of the Vane Foundation. A murmur went through the crowd. We will focus on providing legal and financial aid to women trapped in abusive financial dependencies, Harper announced. We will teach them how to read the fine print, how to build their own equity, how to be their own saviors. She raised her glass. To new beginnings, and to reading the contract before you sign it. To new beginnings, the crowd echoed, cheering loudly, desperate to be on the winning side. Harper smiled. It wasn't a cold smile anymore. It was a smile of genuine triumph. As the band struck up a celebratory tune, Harper walked off the stage. Dominic met her at the bottom of the stairs. That was quite a mic drop, he said. It needed to be done, Harper replied. So what now? Dominic asked. We've conquered Seattle. Sterling is dust. Henderson is yours. The foundation is launched. What does Harper Vane do tomorrow? Harper looked toward the window, where the city lights of Seattle twinkled like fallen stars. She thought about the power she held, the freedom she had fought for, and the future that was entirely, beautifully hers. She turned to Dominic, her eyes sparking with a new fire. Tomorrow, she said, linking her arm through his as they walked toward the bar. Tomorrow, we look at the European markets. I hear London has some old money that needs a little restructuring. She laughed, and for the first time in 3 years, the sound was completely free. The Queen had claimed her throne, and the reign of Harper Vane had only just begun. And that is the story of how Harper Vane turned a divorce settlement into a billion-dollar empire. It brings a whole new meaning to the phrase, living well is the best revenge. Ethan lost his wife, his fortune, and his legacy because he was too afraid to stand up to his mother, while Beatrice learned the hard way that you should never underestimate the quiet ones, especially when they know how to code. What do you think? Was Harper too harsh on Ethan at the end, or did he get exactly what he deserved for not having her back? I want to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of high-stakes revenge and corporate drama, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell notification so you never miss a story. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next video.